me run this. All right. Okay. Welcome to the next episode of the Gospel of Cleveland. This is your boy D Freezy, aka Cleezy Fashizi. I am very pleased to welcome a guest tonight. Like I said, I do not take advice from people who do not do things for a living. I don't try to give out information from people that are not, you know, trained in certain areas. So tonight, our guest is Jesse McCoy. Jesse is a clinical professor of law and a supervising attorney for the Duke Law Civil Justice Clinic. He teaches a seminar course, mentors students in developing and improving basic civil litigation skills, and oversees their handling of cases for indigent clients who are often unable to obtain adequate representation in the traditional civil justice system through the clinic's partnership with the Legal Aid of North Carolina. Jesse's from Durham. He also operated a practice in Raleigh for years. He's a undergrad of Florida A&M. Went to law school at North Carolina Central, so eagle pride for him. And everybody welcome Jesse McCoy to the show. Jesse, thank you for joining us tonight.
Man, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I wanted to get you on because, like we were discussing before we went live, I have been in a few meetings and there's been a lot of discussions around housing. I know you, through your work with the civil law clinic, do some of that work. So I wanted to get your thoughts on it. And, we were talking before the show, so just going to get right into it. So you work with people who don't have financial resources that are facing problems with evictions and substandard housing. So just talk about what that looks like, what problems you see that people come to you with.
Absolutely. So our clinic is designed, and it's probably the most external facing clinic that Duke Law School has. Okay. Our goal is to try to get students who don't often get exposed to litigation to get some immediate litigation experience and to learn what the impact of that experience can be on the greater community around them. Right. And so when this clinic was designed in 2014, it was designed to address the issues that were plaguing Durham County specifically. Okay. And after numerous surveys and studies, what we came to find out was that Durham County was actually leading the state of North Carolina in the rate of evictions. In 2015, it was about 1 out of every 28 tenants was being evicted in Durham County. And so we wanted to address that issue. And how we did that was we combined forces with Legal Aid of North Carolina, as well as Durham County's Department of Social Services. We figured that this would kind of be a streamline for people who, if they just needed monetary rental assistance, Department of Social Services at that time communicated to us there are pots of money that they have for this purpose that go unmet. And so we wanted the community to know about that. But we also didn't want to throw good money, good taxpayer money, into situations where landlords were having you live with rats, bed bugs, roaches, things of that nature. So we thought that everybody should have a legal review. And the legal review could either come through Legal Aid of North Carolina, but they have certain limitations on representation based on their overall guidelines and the Legal Services Corporation restrictions. So we don't have those restrictions. Okay. And so for us, it was anything that Legal Aid can't take, we'll take, at least review it, see if it's something that should qualify for rental assistance. Or if otherwise, if we need to bring counterclaims against the landlord for operating substandard housing conditions, we're positioned to do that and to argue on behalf of Durham residents in small claims in district court where needed. And then lastly, what we also realized is because of all of the good work that we were doing, Durham County was a bit more insulated during the period of COVID than most counties in the state because we had already set up this framework of how to deal with people who are being evicted. So we still, it's not to say that we didn't have people who were struggling and dealing with
Right.
stuff. But compared to some of the counties that surround us,
Mm-hmm.
we were a lot more protected. We did a good job of setting up a courthouse clinic to give people on the spot advice,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes even offer on the spot representation. And that program was recognized by the White House. So I was able to do an address for President Biden to talk about some of the things that we were working on in the community.
Mm-hmm.
I've also been able to talk to Congress about some of our responses to evictions generally. And so we've had a lot of opportunity to kind of interact with people at the federal, state, and local level in dealing with specifically the issue of evictions.
That is awesome. So you guys kind of fill the gap between what legal aid can actually do and what people actually may need that's not provided by legal aid.
That's correct.
Okay, I understand. With respect to y'all, that's yeah, not many people are in that line of work. I don't know how lucrative it is, but yeah, that's one of the things that I've been becoming aware of in talking about housing with people in the community is that there are there are services and programs, but there are gaps there that people often fall into. And then when you're in this space where you need help, but you're not technically qualified to receive the help that's available or whatever. So yeah,
Absolutely.
that's great. So what so um government housing or assisted housing is subsidized. So, what are some of the issues that, as far as around substandard housing? Because I know with Section 8 housing and things of that nature, most of the money that goes to the landlord comes from the government. So, they just want to make sure that that money is coming in and do, incur as few costs as possible. You know what I mean? And so the faucet kit stays on. So, what kind of stuff did you do you see?
So we see things from a variety of viewpoints because we deal with people who are in private landlord tenant situations. We deal with people who are in conventional public housing, and we deal with people who have subsidized housing either through Section 8 vouchers or what they call housing choice
Mm-hmm.
program, or who have what's called project-based Section 8, which is when
Mm-hmm.
you don't get a voucher, but the benefit flows with the unit.
Mm-hmm.
And so the problems that you see are unique. One is that for a lot of people who live in conventional public housing, the hope is to elevate to receive a housing choice voucher so
Right.
that you now can leave the housing authority in a sense and go find somebody on the private market who will work with you.
Mm-hmm.
The problem in Durham County, though, is that there are fewer and fewer landlords who are willing to accept the Section 8 voucher, because to accept the Section 8 voucher, you have to accept some of the regulations that come along with it. So
Right.
that means that your place has to be open to an inspection whenever the housing authority or the person complains.
Mm-hmm.
That means that you have to make sure that you repair things immediately if you want to stay in good graces. But
Mm-hmm.
the other side of this is kind of the business aspect of it. So as you mentioned, they're going to want to maximize how much money they're getting from the government,
Mm-hmm.
minimize how much they're paying out.
Right.
Well, if you live in a place like Durham that has Duke University, North Carolina Central, even people who go to UNC who live in Durham, right?
Right.
Then what they say is, why would I even deal with the red tape and bureaucracy that comes with dealing with the housing choice voucher program when I got people in college who get, student loans or whatever, who are
Right.
able to pay the amount that I want, and I don't have to
Right.
deal with any of those headaches, right?
Right. Right.
So because of that, we've got fewer people accepting them, and it makes the wait list for people who get Section 8 vouchers, it's about 4 years long. So even if you get, like, you apply for Section 8, you're going to be waiting for 4 years before they call you to tell you, hey, we got you
We got a unit.
You just got, you got a voucher. Because then you got to take the voucher and find a landlord.
Find the unit.
Correct. Who's going to work
Wow.
with you. So
Wow.
that's one bucket of problems, right?
Right.
Then we've got private landlord tenants, particularly private landlords who are a bit more predatory. And
Mm-hmm.
those are the ones who know that maybe you don't qualify for a housing choice voucher, and maybe you don't live in public housing, but you still don't make enough to go to the nicer places that are in the market. So they say, okay, well, you can come here, and
Right.
they get you in, and they usually lure you in with all kinds of incentives and first month free and all that stuff. But then once you get your stuff in there, you get comfortable, they
Mm-hmm.
jack up the price, because unfortunately in North Carolina, there's no regulation or statute.
No rent control.
Correct.
No rent control in the state of North Carolina.
As a matter of fact, it is statutorily illegal to have rent control in North Carolina under General Statute 42-14.1. So, and you may be asking, why would we do that? Why would we preempt people to be able to do it?
Exactly.
Well, one of the things that I explain to my students and I explain to the community all the time is you have to remember that the General Assembly is made up of people who are owners, right? Not tenants. Right. So they're protecting their interests with the legislative process.
Right.
And by doing this, we have a rich history and it's not just North Carolina, it's all Southeast.
No, it's everywhere. It's nationwide. Yeah.
It's all, especially in the Southeast, there's a rich history of capitalizing on people who don't have access to elevate, right? So we saw it in Jim Crow, we saw it during slavery. It's all like, how do we capitalize? And that's why it's the same demographic in all of these regions that are going to have the issues with housing. There you go. Richard Rothstein explains it perfectly. He also talks about the federal government's role in ensuring that it's perpetuated. And so all of these things are things that people don't always understand because in our mindset, in our community, we want to believe that, things are supposed to be fair. And if we work hard and we do what we're supposed to do, there's going to be some level of fairness that works out for us. And as an attorney, the hard part for me is having to explain to people, well, no. Like law is all about power. That is the point of law, to make sure that some people have power and some people don't.
We need to pause. We need to pause for a minute because you just dropped something very profound. Law is about what?
Power.
Right. And it's meant to protect who?
Those in power. The people with the power, right?
Right. I'm reading right now, and we'll get back. I'm reading this book, City of Courts by Mike Davis. It is about Los Angeles, the politics of Los Angeles. And one thing, so it starts in the 19th century when Los Angeles was a dusty desert town. And the only thing that changed it into what it is now is water. They got water from the High Sierra Mountains through the LA Aqueduct, and then they were able to turn it into a metropolitan area. But a couple of things he says is local politics are controlled by the wealthy and the developers, which is still true today.
Absolutely.
One of the most undemocratic bodies of government in any place is the county. Because it's only like, I don't know how many, I think it's 5 or 6 county commissioners in Durham. They control all of the unincorporated areas of the county. That's a lot of power. Mm-hmm. So the developers influence policy to protect them, which is what I think you're saying.
Absolutely. And we have to remember also, because I know you're from Durham like I'm from Durham. So Durham of 2024 is not Durham from the 80s, right? Durham from the 80s is like if you had a family of 4 and you were trying to live and you had to go to an apartment, you could find something $500, $600 a month. Not a big deal.
Right.
Those things don't exist anymore.
No. I got the numbers right here. For a 1-bedroom, the average price in Durham is $1,382 a month. For a 2-bedroom, it's $1,608 a month.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And how did we get here? Well, we got here because in those days, there was an opportunity by the local government to seize on the fact that there was development that wanted to come into the area to be closer to these research institutions, right? So what we did was we incentivized the development by saying, we're not going to charge you taxes if you come in here. But we didn't put in the appropriate stopgaps that you would see in some of the larger cities to say you have to hire a certain percentage of people from here. So what those companies did was they just took staff that were working already in Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Seattle, and who already were making a lot of money in those metropolitan areas and transferred them here so they could feel like kings because they have more money, more bargaining power, and expanded by essentially ignoring the people in Durham who are already here. But everything bends to the money. So once people get here and they have more money, landlords know they have an opportunity to make more. So they raise the price, leave behind the people from Durham.
Supply and demand. Yeah. And those people that migrated from those northern cities, they were already acclimated to paying more for housing than us. So it wasn't a shock to them. You know what I mean? And you're exactly right. What we've seen it, right? We've seen it with Durham Police Department attrition rate. People, police leaving here, going to other cities because they make more money. And it's not greed. And we saw it with the sanitation workers too, right? They
Absolutely.
struck because what we have done, what we have allowed to happen is the developers to come in here and raise the price of housing so high that the people that are from here and work for the city can't afford to live in.
Absolutely.
And you're exact. And you said we didn't put any guardrails in. I was in a meeting this week, and I think I'm smart. I was in a meeting this week with one of our esteemed council members, and I said, why don't we just tax the developers and use that tax to provide affordable housing, or either. And she was like, we can't do that by law. What you just said about rent control, we can't do that by law. The General Assembly won't allow us to. We can't even make them put in a sidewalk or a school. And my thing is, if we tax them and make them provide so many affordable units, or we take the money and then provide the affordable units ourselves, they're just going to pass the cost on to whoever they're selling the units to. They're not going to absorb it. So what difference does it make? So like I think there's a solution, but the problem is the people that we need to get to sign off on it are our landlords.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you this too, and this is another tricky part about the law. So municipalities, particularly in the southeastern states, are governed by this concept called Dillon's Rule. And Dillon's Rule basically says that the municipality only has as much power as the state entity has decided to concede to it. Okay. Now, anybody who knows North Carolina and understands North Carolina history or North Carolina politics knows that our General Assembly is largely conservative, largely white, largely people of affluence, because the money that you make in General Assembly isn't that much. Right. But you have to be able to live off of that, and the only people who can do that are the people
who are the wealthy and affluent. Right. Yeah.
Yes. So the problem is that even for a city, and General Assembly is not a big fan of Durham for this, a city that's very progressive and has a lot of thoughts about what they want to do, if they don't have an independent income source, like Charlotte Mecklenburg has independent income sources, right? Because they're so big and they have banking capitals, sports teams,
tax base. They have tax base that can
absolutely
supplement.
Absolutely. Yeah. But if you're Durham and you're trying to do it basically with what the state is giving you, then the fear is that the state is going to then give you less, or that you do something to run afoul of that rule that makes the state want to sue you, right? Or otherwise regulate what you are able to do. Right. And because of that, we try to go for a lot of times the cherry pick things that we can get. So, maybe we can't get, source of income discrimination ban, but we might be able to get, the Crown Act, right? Like maybe we try to cherry pick the things so we don't rock the boat too much. And I think the problem with that is everything trickles down. And I tell this to my students all the time. General Assembly people who make these statutes that govern what we do, it's very unusual for you to run into them at church, at the grocery store, whatever. But your local government officials, you'll see them. Right. And so they have to wear a lot of the badges for things that they didn't even control, because they feel like they're handcuffed to doing what it is they're limited to do.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah, that's it. It's so it's interesting because the conservative wing of the national political parties, they are strong proponents of states' rights. Mm-hmm. But then, from what you said, from further investigation, the municipalities don't have that same autonomy that the state has.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even that concept, I laugh all the time when conservative groups talk about states' rights and the importance of states' rights. Okay. So for people who are viewing who may not know, this concept of states' rights is something that came out of slavery. Right?
Thank you.
It was like which states get to have slavery and which states don't. And they said instead of the federal government imposing any kind of law, you need to stay out of it, let the states decide, right? But the problem is, historically, when it comes to issues with minorities, when it comes to issues with women, when it comes to issues with LGBTQ, whatever, the states, and especially in the South, have never been friendly to those advancements. So
No.
everything is states' rights when they don't want to change the things that they're doing. But they
Right.
also, it's not just about the restrictions, it's also about who's making money off of it, right?
That's
So
what it's really about, right?
exactly. So
Yeah.
even with the period of slavery, like it's not so much that we don't want the federal government telling us what to do. It's that we're making Walmart money off of this, and we don't want to part with it, right?
Right.
Then you're gonna make
Right.
us free. You're gonna make us free, black people. Then okay, well we're gonna treat them substandard
Right.
because we still gonna find a way to pimp the situation to make money off
Right.
of it.
Right. It was an economic thing.
Absolutely.
The northern industrial union cities couldn't compete with slave labor.
Absolutely.
That's what it was about.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's infused. I mean, the people laugh, but I tell you, like the root of everything bad in America is always back to racism, right? Because it
Speak on
infuses all these other instrumentalities of the economy, right? So in America, our big business centers, our banking, our insurance, all that stuff started because of slavery, right?
all of it.
All
All
of
of
it.
it
So,
has its basis in ensuring the ensuring flesh.
absolutely, right? So
Yes.
all of those things now that we kind of like hone and honor as, oh, this is just an institution we're supposed to trust, is
Right.
stuff that never had to pay out, right? If anybody got paid, it was the former slave owners who got reparations, not anybody who was enslaved,
Right.
right?
Even the union states
Absolutely.
got paid back. Maryland is one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it created a divide economically that's why when people in our culture always say it feels like every generation we're reinventing the wheel. It's because you are, right? It's because you are. It's not, it's reinventing the wheel. There are people who are living, our counterparts on the other side are living on fifth, sixth, seventh generation wealth.
Wealth.
Uh,
Wealth transfer.
correct.
Yeah.
And we are like, all right, we made it. We made it to adulthood.
Right.
So
Right. It's a dynamic contrast.
it's very different. Very different. So
It
even these
just
laws
is.
that go back to protect the people who have, like everything in my world, we deal with redlining, predatory lending,
Right.
right? Nobody could be a predatory lender if you didn't need the money from them in the first place, right?
Right.
But they know you do. That's why they're like, okay, well,
Right.
we're gonna charge you 22% interest.
You playing with a fixed deck. You playing with a fixed deck, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even the concept of like redlining is so insidious because they intentionally went out their way to make sure that businesses and communities in black areas were systematically devalued so that
Right.
whiteness became better than black. So people would say, if you got money in the black side of town, you need to move over to the white side of town.
And that's what we do. And that's what we do.
That's
So
what we do.
it's just, most of us that like as soon as we make it, we out. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
it.
And that's and it's so in, like you said, it's entrenched and ingrained. And we've been taught to ignore it. We've been taught to ignore what was done and the effects. And that's why I'm so glad to talk to you tonight. And so because you're just reinforcing what my suspicions.
Mhm.
You know,
Absolutely.
but my suspicions are backed up by research. But
Mhm.
so let me just go ahead and ask you for the record. Reparations. What's your position?
Oh yeah, we need it. I need it. There's no delay. We need it. So here's
Right.
the thing. I feel like the hard part for us to get it is that there's always going to be a moving of the goalposts, right? So the big thing, I don't know if you remember, but a few years ago they put together a federal council on reparations with Ta-Nehisi Coates,
Yeah.
Karen Bass, all those people. And they brought forth to Congress why the need is important. And the agreement was, okay, we're going to keep researching. That's moving your goalposts, right? Now they got people who are burning books, trying to convince teachers not to teach about slavery, all this stuff. So
Right.
they're trying to get the new generation to forget about it or
Right.
to treat it as if it's a handout, right?
Right.
Because if we look at it as a handout, then people on the other side are going to say, well, why do they get something that I don't get, right?
They do. Which they
I
do.
didn't own it. Right. So my thing is, okay, it's not about the handout, but anytime, even in our like criminal justice system, if somebody commits a crime, right? It's so funny that people don't know. You commit a crime, like let's say you're a bank robber or you sell drugs, you commit a crime, you get caught, right?
Mhm.
You go to jail. They're also going to put out there restitution, right? They're going to get their money back.
Right.
Right? Because you did something wrong to take somebody's stuff, right? So what do you get back for trafficking and destroying an entire African civilization of people, bringing them to a new country, forcing them to work for hundreds of years, abusing them, murdering them, whatever. And right now, they've done is that's all.
And let's be clear. Let's be clear. When we were quote unquote freed, we were freed with absolutely nothing.
Right. Oh, and then that's when they passed the vagrancy laws. So it's like you free, but then you vagrant, and then they make that a felony. So you go back in the system, and now you know.
So now you pee and then just convict leasing.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. All of that. You know, Slavery by Another Name. Great documentary on PBS. And you freed us with absolutely nothing. We were from 1865 to 1877 able to amass political power, property, and some sense of community. In 1877, the Great Compromise between Rutherford B. Hayes and what was the other guy? Rutherford B. Hayes and I can't remember. Hayes won because they agreed to remove the Union troops out of the South, which pushed us basically back into a second slavery, which lasted until 1965. So the crazy thing is they say, well, we didn't own any slaves, and it was so long ago. So 1900 was less than 40 years. Slavery had only been over for 40 years in 1900. That's the 20th century. It wasn't that long ago. My grandparents was born in the 1930s, 20s. You're talking about two or three generations ago. And so I'm a business major. The interesting thing to me is we don't talk about interest on debt that's not paid when it comes to slavery, but we talk about it on everything else. You know what I'm saying? You're talking about 1619 to 1865 unpaid labor adjusted for inflation with interest.
And I'm willing to go even further than that because my grandfather was a sharecropper in North Carolina. So you know the land better than anybody else, but they gonna jip you when you get to harvest time to be like, oh yeah, remember I fronted you cash for the seed? Like what? So it's just been years and years, decades, centuries of exploitation of black labor. And what happens is every time that people demand their just due, there's either violent resistance or there's this political attempt to push the goalposts further. So now we've gotten to the point where we've got to research, right? We're going to look into it. Am I optimistic that Congress is ever going to approve it? Nah, I wouldn't say to hold your breath for it. But what I will say is, you know, I'm a very spiritual person, and I feel like things tend to work out based on how karma and God wanted to work out. And I find it very interesting that in a time where so much stuff has been happening, Black people have still found ways to assume prominent national offices or pursue things. It's like no matter what you try to do, we still make it, right?
It's like I don't know what you thought. We still here.
We still here.
Wherever you go, we're gonna be right there. Like you think you're gonna go to Mars and leave us? We going to. Like it's like I don't know, and they don't want to leave us because what I say is when they leave us, who's going to be the N word then? You can't have a white unless you have an N word. That's the binary way we think. You know what I mean? We think that we do that in so many different things. So you don't really want to leave us. You just don't want us in close proximity.
America's currency has always been race. Okay. So when you go to any other country, right, there are certain things that you can just expect. Like if you hurt yourself, you can go to the hospital. It's not a big deal, right?
Right.
In America, it's like, what kind of insurance you got? Like,
like how bad is it? Like we're gonna stabilize you, but you can take this aspirin and I will see you. And, it's so funny you say that. I caught Nikki Haley this morning on Face the Nation, and she was like, she said this, and I'm gonna try to quote her literally verbatim. She said, "We don't want to be like Canada and have socialized medicine." And I said, "Why not? Have you talked to a Canadian? They don't have a problem with it. I have in my job, I have Canadian clients, and we have discussed it before. They love it. They love being able to go to the hospital and not worry about getting a bill.
I went to Canada and I was shocked because in my hotel there was a dental office where the dentist was sitting at the door like a greeter for Walmart. And I went in, I thought it was funny because me being American, I'll go in, I was like, hey, what are you doing? He was like, oh, do you need something with your teeth? I was like, no, but why are you out here? He was like,
yeah, how much
need help. And it just blew my mind, like, oh, you really just walk in and get checked out and you good.
Right. And it's paid for by the state, and then nobody complains. You know what I mean? So like you said, America, and I think Calvin Coolidge said this: the business of America is business. The only thing, the primary religion, they will tell you other things, but the primary religion is the dollar. That's what this country as a country worships. We don't worship anything else. How can I make the most and pay the least? And pay my workers the least. You know what I'm saying? So like that's really it. You know, we mask it with all these other things. So yeah, we talked about housing, we talked about what you do with housing. Let me see. So let's talk about politics. Kamala Harris, is she black enough?
She's fine with me. She went to Howard. She ain't she good with me. I guess my thing is, it's probably gonna sound bad, but I feel like I always tell people, they used to give you the president's books, right? When I was little, you had to get a book and you learn all these good things about horrible people, right? So you going through the book, you learn
about slave owners and slum lords and people who
So we only, I mean, it's America in the grand scheme of things. The United States of America is still a baby country, right?
Yeah.
Compared to Egypt and the Saudi Arabia, all that. So we're a baby, right? Absolutely. But even as a baby country, we are at 46, 47.
Yeah.
And we talk about 45 or 46 of them are white, right?
White men.
Over and over. So my thing is, I wouldn't care what she identified as. It's a difference from what we've had thus far. And on top of that, I kind of feel like this is the first election that I've seen that's like the policies are completely divergent. So it is people who say, well, I don't know enough about the policies. I'm like, okay.
You never do, though. You never do. This is not the first time you didn't know.
Right. But this isn't even like a confusing one. Like sometimes it's like, okay, I really got to dig into like what they're trying to propose for the tax changes. Like I got to dig into that. This one is just like, no, you know what you get.
Exactly.
You know what you're getting. One person wants to expand so we can have more stuff. One person is like, nah, I want my friends to be good. Yeah. You know what you're getting, right?
Right. So
and I'm not judging. I'm like, look, I know if there are people, like I got friends of mine who used to be pro athletes, whatever. There are people who are millionaires, right, who want to keep their money. I just wish people would be honest about it. Like, just be like, look,
thank you.
I want to keep
just say that. Just say that.
Just say that, right? Now you got to wear that because when you go into the community, if people are like, oh, so we can't eat, so you can be rich, you got to face the consequences.
Right.
But I don't understand I don't know where her policy. No. Then on top of that, we've got like the huge sexism issue that we've already seen when Hillary Clinton ran the last time, and I wasn't necessarily a Hillary Clinton fan, but it was the fact that, like, if you're not gonna vote for her, there's got to be a better reason that because she's a woman. Like, it has to be a better reason.
And I'll be transparent. I'm not a Hillary fan right now today, and I very very unintelligently made a protest vote in the 2016 election because I just couldn't. I was under the impression that America was not stupid enough to elect Donald Trump to start off with. So I felt like I could trick my vote off. I'm gonna just be honest. And I did. I wrote in Bernie. I wrote in Bernie because that was that's who after Obama, that would have been perfect in my opinion. So that's what I wanted. And Hillary's body of work is no beacon of light. Like she's problematic in Haiti for sure. She's problematic. And Bill, they both problematic. They out of Arkansas. I know their history, so I didn't have a problem with a woman. I didn't want that woman.
Right.
That Kamala doesn't have the same background and history as Hillary Clinton. So in this case, I'm with you 100%. She's a non-white woman. And I am of the opinion, being raised by two women, that they're the smarter of the species.
I agree.
So let's see what happens.
I agree. And I'll add to this everything you said, plus the fact she has a demonstrated track record of brilliance and excellence, right? Nobody can say she's not qualified. She's done everything that you could possibly do to get where she is. Right. And the fact that, Joe Biden was finally able to read the tea leaves and be like, you know what, let me step to the side. Right. Like this is, I don't think there's somebody who's ever been more qualified.
And that just speaks to us as a people having to navigate spaces in this country. Anytime you see us at that level, there's no doubt we're qualified.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt. Mediocrity is not, we're not allowed to be mediocre, and we're not allowed to cut corners and, oh, well, he doesn't have training in that area, but he's done this and it's transfer. We don't get those kind of luxuries.
Absolutely.
So she has the qualifications. She has performed at a high level in every position she's held that I'm aware of, and the bar is real low. After the president we had before Biden, it's real low. So like shit, we could get Bubbles, Michael Jackson's monkey, and I mean, I'm just being for real. Like I take them. You know what I'm saying? Because this is what I want people to understand. The president alone can't do a lot without the Congress.
Correct.
Without the House and the Senate.
Correct.
What they can do is shape what we talk about around the dinner table every night. Or well, most people don't eat around the dinner table, but anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
So they can shape national conversation. If they're talking about housing, we're going to talk about housing. Housing is real high. The president said it was real high today. Like, so that's the best we can expect. I think black people they think it's like, I'm not going to say black people ain't intelligent. We some of the most intelligent people on the planet, but we get into this mode of like, it's a homecoming king or queen. You don't have to love them. Like Dr. Jerome Fox, he said, you have to pick you can't expect them to do things that you have to do for yourself as a people. But you can pick the one that's going to impede your progress the least. And that's all we can expect. We can't expect politics. Neither party's going to save us.
Absolutely. Oh, definitely. Absolutely.
And there's racists in both parties.
Absolutely.
So, but we can say, okay, we need to do these things, which is going to slow us down or slow our progress from achieving these goals the least. We can do that.
And
go ahead.
I'll just add, so a lot of people in the community, not just ours, but generally throughout America, don't really understand at the federal level how things work. So the president can set out an agenda of what they would like to see from Congress, right? Right. These are the issues that I care about. Please do something about it. Congress is kind of like the money manager, right? So if somebody say, okay, you can do it, but we give you $0 to do it, then is it going to get done, right? No. So Congress is there to say, okay, these are the things in your agenda that we value. These are the laws that we want to enact, and this is how much funding we're going to put behind those things. And the problem historically has been that the things that most elevate minority and marginalized communities are things that Congress is not for. So when it comes to things like, okay, well, maybe we want to expand access to government contracts and let some black-owned companies do some defense contracts for a second. Then, Congress like, ooh, I'm not so sure, right? We want to stay with Boeing. We got because somebody in Congress is getting flights to Tahiti from Boeing, right? It's the way that it works.
It's called lobbying. It's called lobbying. It's legal bribery.
It's a lot to it. Then on top of that, like a lot of people think that, the only vote that you cast that matters is the presidency. And that's probably the vote you cast. It matters, but it's probably the one that's the least impactful to your direct life. It's more so about one, local government. Like, don't just skip over that stuff. And then at the other side of it, Congress, like, who are your representatives? Who is the senator? Have you done research? Or are you just picking a name because they are a certain color or a certain party? What's their voting record on the things you care about? And the understanding that there is no perfect politician. If you check voting records, they're probably going to vote for some things you agree with, but they're also going to vote against you on other things you agree with. Right. And for people like me, that gets difficult because what if they say, we want to do all sorts of stuff to improve people's access to housing, which is a big issue for me. But right. Then they're like, I'm not really caring about the George Floyd bill. Like, well, hold on now. Like, I don't know. I got to make some tough decisions. But if the opponent they're running against is like, screw housing and screw the George Floyd.
Right. So you're like,
all right.
Well, this guy look a little better than hey, at least he's gonna do housing. Yeah, right. Yeah, I feel yeah. So yeah, it's and that's at the end of the day, that's all it is, man. You're not gonna get somebody that aligns up with you. And you know, I've said this before, like as a cross section of America, we're not binary enough to be red or blue.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? But that's the system we have. So what I think is a lot of people have a problem with the system and they blame the candidates. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And we can change the system, but it takes all of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can change it, you know, but the electoral college is problematic. But it's going to take us calling our representatives.
Repeat that. Because it's people vote and they just go. So you like, these don't work for you. Like they got to be accountable to you for the things they do. But we just don't. We'll see them in 4 years.
Yeah, and you may not see them. But you will see them election time.
Absolutely.
And when they're in front of the cameras, it's a perfect time to ask.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So get them on the record. Like, what's your position on reparations? I sure plan to ask Kamala when Kamala was in Raleigh. I was going to ask her if I could have got close enough. I just, that's my right. Mm-hmm. I can ask you what your position is on an issue, and I ask every politician I come into contact with. That's my first question. What's your position on reparations? Mm-hmm. That informs me on a lot of other things. Like if you say, well, I think I don't know, we need to look at it. Okay, that's the standard line. Mm-hmm. If you say, yeah, we need it, okay. You're my guy. You know what I'm saying? You're my guy, until somebody else says something more definitive. You know what I'm saying? So,
all right. You gotta watch it too, because they'll be like, I know for Kamala and even for Barack Obama, I think the hard part was we being like black people, we just don't have the numbers that even if all of us voted for the same person, which we practically almost do, but if all of us voted for the same person, and nobody from the other side of the aisle voted for them, we still wouldn't win.
They're not going to win. Right.
So there are certain things that they are triggered to not say, but I always check like the eye contact. Like if you ask about reparations, they like, I don't think that's the conversation right now. I think what's the priority is housing. But
yeah. You're like,
okay, all right.
Yeah, cool. I got you later. Right. Like I can't say. And that was my thing with Obama. Like the first time he was elected, I was like, okay. Every first-term president wants a second term. He can't go too far. Mm-hmm. So I gave him a pass in the first term. The second term, not so much. I was like, okay, what you can't run again and win. Like I thought I saw you wink and nod, but like, what's up? When is it coming? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now let me be clear. He's the best president in my lifetime.
Okay.
He's the best president in my lifetime for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some things that I wish he would have done that he didn't, but he's a centrist and he's a politician. So, the other thing is we didn't necessarily come right out and ask, nor do we have an apparatus to come directly to him and ask.
Absolutely. That's the problem, right?
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
Because my question is, who speaks on our behalf? Is it the Congressional Black Caucus?
Depends on the time of year, right? so baby. I'll say this. There are some people in Congressional Black Caucus who are awesome. And let me say this too, because I want to be fair to everybody. So part of my job, I've had the opportunity to interact with a lot of people in federal, state, and local government. Right. And they're not all of the same party. You would be surprised the number of people who are for you in an advertisement, but against you when it comes down to doing something, and the number of people who are against you in an advertisement who are for you when it comes time to doing something. I learned that during COVID. There was, I won't say his name, but there was a Republican representative who, like, I couldn't convince to do any of the stuff that North Carolina needed, right? And somebody called me and was like, the way to convince him is to not talk about it from a Durham County perspective, find a county that's dealing with the same issues that's a white county and have somebody vocal call. And that's what I did. I went and I got that person. And all he did was took the same plan I was using and we got the money, right? So Durham County got the benefit. But it's the matter of the optics is I'm helping little small town Nancy here and say this.
Wow.
It's all about constituents and racism and all this stuff. But then when you deal with the apparatus,
that's
you got to deal
bro.
with what you got to do to get what you need for your people, right?
That is so crazy. But I get it. It's like, and that's what I want Black people to become politically savvy enough to do. It's like it doesn't matter how you get it, as long as you get it, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like don't call it reparations, call it restitution. Call it something, whatever you need to call it to make it justified in their minds, so they'll sign off on the check.
Absolutely.
And we do need a check. We need some cash.
Oh,
and some land.
Definitely. I'm all for the cash. They need to pay up.
Right. So I ain't gonna put you on the spot, and I don't want you to say nothing that's gonna jeopardize you. The Supreme Court. What's your opinion? What's your opinion on the Supreme Court?
Compromised. So one of the most destructive things that a president can do is get picks, but this was some colluding between a president and a Congress. So if you all remember, there was a Congress that was able to stop Barack Obama's getting a pick for Merrick Garland.
Merrick Garland, that's right.
Become
Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell was
absolutely. Absolutely. So because he didn't get his pick, because they call him a lame duck president when he was on his way out, they saved that pick for President Trump. But it also happens that you had Ginsburg, who passed away under President Trump, so he gets to fill that position. Right. So we've had all these justices now, such that it creates an imbalance. So we've got about 6 conservative, right? And then one who calls himself a swing, but we only have like really we only have 2 solid progressives. That's Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson, who just got in there, right? So what you're seeing right now is the fruits of that. So everything from the presidential immunity case, right? Everything from, these cases that challenge for Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness plans, right? All of these things are getting thwarted by the Supreme Court. And largely, I know this is probably scary for people to hear, but largely these things are not based on any sort of legal precedent, which is odd for attorneys because we're trained to argue at the higher appellate levels based on this was the presidential standard that's been established for this way. So now we're having to learn, like, well, what do they want to hear, right? To make it work. And then come to find out, well, what they want to hear is, Boeing bought them a jet and Boeing got them a yacht. That's what they want to hear. Or, you got Alito who got to stop the steal flag at his house.
That was his wife. It wasn't him.
Throw your wife under the bus is big with them. So you got these things that are happening, but the problem with Supreme Court decisions is that, I tell my students the dissent of today is the law of tomorrow, but that tomorrow is going to be 20, 30 years from now, right? So like Plessy v. Ferguson, they said, oh, no, we don't have no problem with separate but equal. That's fine. Well, it took until 1954 for that to change, right?
Exactly.
So it's the setback of being able to do the things you want to do. The best example of this has to do with the cases that challenged, they say it was the Asian demographic that was challenged, but it wasn't. It was Ed Bloom. The cases that challenged affirmative action. Right. So now we're seeing you getting all these articles coming out talking about Black admission into these universities has diminished to levels, even at HBCUs, Black male admissions to levels of pre-1970s, right? And everybody's acting shocked, and we're like, we've been telling you what was going to happen. Like this, these schools is waiting for an opportunity to do this, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a definitely an attack on the truth through history, and it's an attack on access to education for people of color, for sure. It's like they just want to keep us, they want to make America great again.
Allegedly, whatever that means, right?
Well, it was. I mean, I guess when you could have us come in and do the housework for you, and one of us tend the garden and stuff. It was great for some people. It wasn't necessarily great for us.
But this is the thing that I'm always like pressed on, right? Like, even though it might have been great for those people who owned it, right? That's what they felt. It was great for them. Not all of the people who are our counterparts across the racial aisle were benefiting in that same way.
No,
right? And my
no.
thing is, but for the fact that we can be treated as a scapegoat, it would be you, right?
Like I said earlier, if they get away from us, who's going to be the N-word? Somebody's got to be the N-word.
They already did this. That's what England was all about. There's a king, and then there's serfs and everybody else, right?
Right.
And they didn't like that. They went so far as to go across the ocean and make a whole new society because they didn't like it.
Exactly. To escape their oppressor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then they became the oppressor of another. You know what I mean? Right. So yeah, it's like yeah. And you know, Bacon's Rebellion. That's what it was all about. The poor Europeans and the poor Africans united together and rebelled against the English, you know, who owned the colonies at the time, and they then, you know, a lot of people say then is when they realized they had to separate us.
Oh, absolutely.
The poor blacks and whites.
Absolutely. Because if you sell a currency of race and you say, well, by inclusion, you're better, right?
Right.
Then it's a lot easier for them to help you engage and be co-conspirators in the
oppression,
continuing oppression, right?
Right.
So that's what happened. And the thing about it is, even the people who are doing this on the lowest levels don't see that a lot of the people that they are trying to throw this oppression upon are doing better than they are. Right. So it's like, you know, that Jay-Z line's like, can't you see we getting money up under you? Like, they don't know, but it feels good because they can go to a rally and everybody looks like them and everybody seems successful. Right. They got hope that this rich man from New York is going to come down and slide you $1 or give you a handshake, right?
And he cares nothing at all about you.
You
know, and it came out that he calls them knuckle draggers or something. One of his former staff in the Democratic convention said he calls them basement dwellers or something to that effect. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure he does.
Absolutely.
I'm sure he does. He knows who his base is, and that's why it's so bizarre to me that they would align themselves, because the wealthy only care about the wealthy. And it doesn't really matter about the color. If you're wealthy, you know, they'll look over the color. If you're truly wealthy, now I'm not talking about you got a good job.
Right.
I'm talking about wealth. I'm talking about your great grandchildren don't have to work. That's wealth. That's you can't pass on a job.
Correct.
A good job. You can pass on the millions that you made from selling flesh and exploiting flesh, though, and that has been done, right?
There's a lot of exploiting flesh, a lot of racial discrimination in his housing cases. All sorts of rich histories.
So I guess it would be fair to say that the credibility of the Supreme Court.
I think right now it really depends on what the issue is, but for the most part, I feel like compromised people can't make fair decisions on something objectively. Right?
Yeah, and so what does that put the legal foundation of the country? What kind of situation does that put you guys in that do this every day when the highest court in the land is compromised?
So for people who do higher level appellate work, and that's usually for us because our communities usually can't afford that kind of work. But for the people who do that for us, NAACP, ACLU, what it means is they're going to file fewer cases, because you don't want to file a case that's going to get a bad precedent that's going to take 30 years to undo. You'd rather just deal with the damage and then hope that the next president is going to appoint people who are going to be more progressive.
Right.
But
you actually got to get up. You got to get new justices in there to hope for anything different than what you expect now.
You do. And the most diabolical thing that President Trump did, which I'll give him his credit, he picked young conservative justices, right? So it's not like they getting ready to die, like none of that stuff. Like they gonna be there for a minute.
For a while.
The only thing that we can talk about doing now is potentially expanding the court to have more justices.
Right.
But you need congressional approval to do that.
Right.
And Congress, if the conservatives are in power, they're not gonna
No,
want it, right?
no, because they control it now. So why would they
Correct.
add more? Yeah,
Correct.
it's not smart. So wow, man. Yeah, and I think that's the thing that people don't focus on a lot either, the effect of appointing those judges. And he appointed judges all down. He appointed a lot of judges. I think it was 300 or something, like at all levels. So, that I try to tell people, like, okay, yeah, you don't think it affect you. You have to go in front of one of these judges, it's gonna affect you though.
Absolutely. And so it does affect you in the sense, especially those higher level appellate cases. Because even for the example of affirmative action, right?
Right.
There are students who are coming to college now that now cannot identify on their application their race, gender, whatever. So the colleges now have a cop-out excuse, or if they are a college that is progressive and want to bring in a diverse population, they've got to find another creative way of getting that information.
Right.
So without knowing it, you can't say, okay, well, we brought in 500 students. We know that, 3% are this or whatever.
Right.
You can't do that. And so now, unless the person volunteers the information,
right.
which, in our community, I don't know how people raised, but my mom was the type that she was like, you don't even check black on the census. Like,
right.
You don't let people know, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not somebody who grew up in a culture that, is going to identify because that white people are going to weed it out or whatever, then you can't get the information in. Right. So it takes a lot of research for people. But that's a change that is going to impact everybody in our society that came directly from Ed Bloom. And he went around after he got that case. He went after the sisters. They had their whole like venture capitalist thing because they couldn't get involved in the white spaces. They weren't being allowed. So they said their own thing and became extremely marketable. And he shut them down, right? He's like, oh, it's racial discrimination. They're not allowing white people to participate. So this man's reckless and he got millions of dollars to blow, right? So he's just doing cases while they got power to be able to say, I'm not going to allow this to happen. I'm going to fund candidates who are going to, get rid of Black history. Like I'm going to do all this stuff to be detrimental. And our job is getting increasingly harder because on some end, we've got, like there are attorneys like me who say, I want to fight for the people, right? When you say you're going to fight for the people, there are some caveats that go into that. One caveat is you never going to be the rich guy, right?
Never. There's no money in it. And not a lot of thanks.
Right. It's often thankless and hardly ever any money that's going to sustain you long term. And the risk of burning out is going to be very high because even for me, when I was in my own practice, it was like, I can go from seeing police brutality to seeing evictions to seeing foreclosures.
Right.
That's a lot. Like, and I got to go home and be happy for my kid. So that's a lot. But what we do is we try to kind of set up silos for people that we know who are doing the work. So I've got a friend of mine who does police brutality cases. That's all he does. So he doesn't have to worry about the housing. He can kick that stuff over to me or somebody else. But you got to have a team. But the other side of this is the people who are from our communities who go to law school oftentimes are in massive debt because of the student loans it took to get there. So in order to ever have a hope of getting out of the debt, you got to go work for a corporate firm for a while. And the corporate firm is going to weaponize them to dismantle the work I'm doing, right? So it's like, it's a catch-22, man. Like the snake eats itself. But it's important for people to kind of understand all of these things are kind of spillover effects of voting, right? Because if you vote for a certain person and they appoint people, it makes things harder for everybody else. And we keep fighting the same battles that our grandfathers, grandmothers was fighting in the 40s, 50s, 60s. It's increasingly hard. Like we still talk about voting rights. Like you would have thought this was resolved. You know what I'm saying? Like we still talk about voting rights, gerrymandering. We talking about, education systems. Like we can't even get, and this is the last thing I'll say, because I know I talk a lot.
No, you're good.
The issue I have is I have spent so much time now because of where I work and the access to things that I have. And I also, on the weekends, I tutor and mentor people in the community. So I'm dealing with my people in the community who are struggling with things like math, reading, whatever,
Right.
trying to help them catch up. And then I go to work and people using artificial intelligence and building whole universes, right? Well, and I'm saying like we so far behind, like
No, no.
to teach you algebra at this point is laughable
Yeah,
compared to
exactly.
what these people are
Exactly.
dealing with.
You need to catch up. You know what I mean? But it's by design, though. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
They don't want us to. They don't want a fair playing field. They don't
Absolutely.
want equal competition.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what it's all about. It's all about making sure that we don't surpass them because
Absolutely.
of the fear that we will treat them the way we
The
have
way they
been
treat
treated.
us. Yep. Guilt.
That's what it is.
Yep.
All right, man. Man, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It was very informative, very educational. If people want to contact the center you run or whatever, or contact you around anything related to housing, let them know how to get in contact with you.
So the best way to reach me is email, because if you call my office, you won't get me. I'm always in court all the time. Email is McCoy at Duke. I'm sorry, McCoy at law.duke.edu.
Okay. All right. All right, man. Well, listen, I enjoyed it. Thank you for taking time out of the first week of football to talk to us tonight. You know what I'm saying? I didn't go over everything I wanted to go over, but that just means we need to have another episode at some time in the future. You
Absolutely.
always welcome. If I can do anything for you, let me know. And I hope you have a good week. And we appreciate you.
Hey man, thank you so much for having me on. It was fun.
All right. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you later.
All right.
Peace.